Hey guys, this is Tom from Marshall Tactical Defense. Today we have a very important topic. There's a lot of riots breaking out. There's an inappropriate action of a police officer, which has triggered a lot of protests and riots. Most of them are peaceful, but we're finding out that there's organized protesters and rioters that are going in and causing all kind of violence and mayhem. I live in a suburb area in Texas. A lot of the cities have enforced curfews, which has now pushed the protesters to the suburb areas. So we have to be extra vigilant and cautious about protecting our loved ones and our homes and our neighborhoods. Today I'm going to give you a couple considerations to think about as far as defending your neighborhood. Number one, the most important point is information. Know what's going on around your area. Use news feeds. What I found recently is Twitter gives you the most up-to-date information. You actually get to hear from some of the protesters themselves posting comments and videos. They're a lot more real-time than some of the news articles. So use multiple sources to get your information, your own personal networks, or whether it's even calling the police department and know if they're and seeing if they're aware of any protests in your local areas. Number two is organize. You need to form a protection team. If hordes of rioters come through your neighborhood, you want to make sure you're planned. Look for guys that are like-minded in your beliefs for our Second Amendment and defending your property and rights. One of the things you can do if you're not too familiar with your neighbors is at least see if you can find any guys who are interested in hunting and fishing, because technically those guys are kind of like-minded, have some basic preparedness and survival skills, I would say. Obviously, if you have any law enforcement officers or former military guys, they would be the ideal candidates. But you got to work with what you got. You may not have that. So, but if anything, you need to have some discussions prior to when the rioters show up. So now start thinking about who you might ask. Maybe have some conversations when you're out and about and try to get that team built. The third one is communication. What I recommend is obviously cell phones. You can also use an app called Signal. It's encrypted conversations. You can use that to communicate. If you're doing some kind of operations, you may not want all that on public phone records in case things go south and it gets pulled in investigation. You want to think smart. Again, you want to always do everything legally. I'm not promoting any kind of violence that is illegal or immoral, but we have to think smart. You want to be able to communicate with each other if you have teams, if they're doing patrols in certain areas. If you're blocking the front entrance and the back entrance, you want to make sure you can communicate. I recommend, and they're very inexpensive, two-way radios. And ideally, if you can get them, an earpiece, so that way you're not broadcasting what you're doing, especially if the rioters actually start to show up. You also might want to have some code words. If something's extremely serious and you're seeing violence, you can just say some kind of code word that other teams that are not in your physical presence can know the threat and respond appropriately. Number four is supplies. Not everybody is prepared. They might only have one gun or weapon. So if somebody has a lot more, now's the time you want to share. Think about your ammo supplies. You always want to have some less than lethal options at your disposal, like pepper spray, like flashlights, baseball bats, anything that can inflict some harm but not necessarily lethal. You don't want to just show up with a bunch of rifles and shotguns and that's your only means of self-defense that you have. Consider handguns, even small handguns. It's very important too if you have any protective gear like bulletproof vests, any kind of paddings like that could be used in sports, just in case you get in a physical confrontation, you have some protection. Maybe even a helmet, if you softball helmet or something. But the only thing you have to be worried about that is if you're gonna have a rifle or something, it could block your line of sight as far as the face mask. So you have to take that into consideration. So I wouldn't recommend those guys wear helmets. The next one, number 5, is know the law. You want to have whoever's the leader should be familiar with this. What I'm going to give you is very important. Now I live in Texas, so this is kind of Texas based. So you want to check your local state regulations regarding self-defense law. You want to have a prep. You want to make sure that all the guys are on board with a plan and some general course of action as to the levels of the force that may be required. In Texas, there's a castle doctrine, so basically we can protect our vehicles. There's obviously as a castle, obviously our home. You can actually do some protection of your neighborhoods, the nice thing in Texas, you don't have a duty to retreat, so you don't have to basically run away and hope you're faster than those who are doing you harm before you can use self-defense. So that's good, but that's not exists in all states. Another important thing is no warning shots, guys. That is illegal, and one is risky because you don't know where the bullets are going. What goes up must come down. It can ricochet off the ground and hit someone. So there's absolutely no warning shots. If you have to display, you can display a firearm in an appropriate situation, and that's fine, but do not pull that trigger unless you intend to kill somebody. You also have to be careful that if some violence was done, you try to miss defending yourself, that if the perpetrators are running away, that you do not shoot them, especially in the back. It won't go well for you. So be very careful. You have to have an imminent threat of serious bodily injury and or death to use lethal force. And if somebody's running away and retreating, that's not imminent at that time. Now, displaying your firearm. Texas is an open carry state, so you're more than welcome to carry it on your side or even have a rifle hanging around your neck. Do not do it in an aggressive manner. So don't keep your finger on the trigger while you're standing. That's an aggressive posture. Just have it hanging around your neck with your arms not on the weapon. People can see it. Obviously, like I said, you can open carry. Another thing is, because the questions came up, can you block entrances to your neighborhoods? Yes and no. You can form a protective barrier. You can have a truck parked in the front, but blocking off the entrances. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to move it. If a residents want to go in and out, you cannot obstruct the residents. So generally speaking, you don't want to do that. But if you see protesters coming and approaching your area, that might be a wise decision. If you have the time and they're coming, I would actually recommend calling the police department and ask them if they can send some units. If they say we're all tied up, we can't help you, they're going to be more apt to actually let you block that intersection in that case. One of the most important things is not to escalate or provoke any situations. A lot of people, even within the protesters, have cell phones. They can make recordings of that. If you have to use lethal force, you're most likely going to have to prove yourself in court. So what you don't want to see is you provoking them, condemning what they're marching about, calling them names, provoking them that you will use force if it's unnecessary. So it's very important that you try to seek peace at all costs. What I would recommend is whoever's in your group who maybe has the least experience in self-defense should be charged with nothing but making video recordings of any altercations between you and the protesters or rioters. That will help you in a court of law. Whatever you say can end up in court and will be highly scrutinized. So guard your words, have some pre-planned phrases you can say, but assume this is going to end up in court, and that's how you should conduct yourself. So always try to seek peace first. Give multiple warnings as much as you can before you react with violence. And number 6, the last thing is one of the most important, is get prayed up, guys. Say your prayers. You always want to seek peace first, but be careful of vainglory. I know this is a very emotional time for many people. Their emotions are riled up, and we don't want to do something stupid. We don't run into the fire and get burned. So violence and self-defense should always be an absolute last resort. A verse from Proverbs 22:3 says, "The prudent man saw the evil and hid himself, and the simple man passed on and suffered loss." So again, violence is last resort. Stay informed, stay awake, stay prepared, guys. Praying for you. God bless and take care. Until next time.